Revenge Office Stories. The champagne flute was still cool in my hand, the ghost of its fizz tingling on my fingertips. Around me, the room was a blur of forced smiles and cheap tinsel, the annual holiday party in full, glorious swing. My boss, Marcus, a man whose ambition was only outmatched by his perfectly gelled hair, raised his glass, the tinny clink of a fork on crystal cut through the lukewarm chatter. I smiled, expecting some generic toast to a profitable year, a year I had pretty much built for him. He wasn't toasting the holidays. He was toasting my termination. And a special farewell, he began, his voice slick with fake warmth, his eyes finding mine across the packed room, to someone who won't be joining us in the new year. A confused murmur rippled through my colleagues. He held up a single, folded piece of paper, a pink slip. Sometimes, he went on, that predatory grin never leaving his face, we have to trim the fat to keep the body healthy. No hard feelings. The music didn't stop. The laughter didn't die. It just bent around me, leaving me in this bizarre pocket of echoing silence. He thought he was just firing a subordinate. He thought he was delivering the final, crushing blow in a silent war he'd been waging against me for years. What he didn't know was that he wasn't ending my career. He was handing me a declaration of war. He had no clue he was creating his biggest competitor. This is the story of how I went from holiday party reject to the CEO who bought his company's debt for pennies on the dollar. To really get the depth of that betrayal, you have to understand my loyalty. For 5 years, I was more than just an employee at Apex Innovations. I was its engine. I wasn't just the first one in and the last one out. I was the one who came in on Saturdays to finish proposals Marcus forgot, the one who took the red-eye flights he found so inconvenient, the one who smoothed over all the client relationships his abrasive style constantly put on edge. My name is Amelia, and at 33, my whole professional identity was wrapped up in that company. I saw myself as a key part of the team. I wasn't naive, not really. I knew the corporate world had sharp elbows. But I believed in a simple, almost quaint idea: hard work plus loyalty equals recognition. It was a formula that had always worked for me, or so I thought. I'd climbed from a junior analyst to the lead account strategist, and my portfolio was the strongest in the company. My specialty was turning lukewarm leads into devoted, high-value partners. I didn't just sell, I built relationships. I learned about my clients' kids, their weekend plans, the problems inside their own companies that kept them up at night. I didn't just solve the problems they brought me. I saw the ones they hadn't spotted yet. This was how I landed the Sterling Group. They weren't just another client. They were the crown jewel, a 7-figure contract that boosted our quarterly revenue by 40% all on its own. Getting them had been a brutal 6-month campaign. Marcus had wanted to go in with his usual aggressive, one-size-fits-all pitch. I argued for a different approach, a slower, more deliberate strategy built on trust. I spent weeks digging into their pain points and building a rapport with their mid-level management, especially a sharp, no-nonsense director named Sarah. When we finally won the account, champagne flowed. Marcus took the stage at the all-hands meeting, soaking up the glory. He talked about his strategy and his foresight. He mentioned my name once, a quick nod to the boots on the ground. I just swallowed my pride, telling myself the win was for the team, that my contribution was understood, even if it wasn't shouted from the rooftops. This became the pattern. My analysis would be stripped of my name and presented as his. My ideas would be shot down in meetings, only to be repackaged and pitched by him a week later. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, a slow, systematic attempt to erase me. Zoe, my only colleague who really saw what was happening, warned me. Documentation is worthless unless your name carries weight, she'd whispered after he took credit for a compliance fix that saved us from massive federal fines. But I kept my head down. I believed the work would speak for itself. I believed loyalty was a shield. The Sterling Group account was my magnum opus. I managed it meticulously, strengthening my bond with Sarah and her team and consistently over-delivering. I thought this success made me indispensable. I thought it meant something. I was so wrong. The very success I built was the weapon he'd use against me. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a liability who knew where the credit really belonged. The annual holiday party was always a tense, mandatory performance of joy. It was held at a swanky downtown hotel ballroom, a place with ceilings too high and lighting too low, meant to make you feel both grand and insignificant all at once. The air was thick with the scent of pine, catered food, and unspoken corporate dread. This year, the tension was cranked up a notch. Rumors of a restructuring had been flying around for weeks, but Marcus had personally assured us that top performers had nothing to worry about. He had looked right at me when he said it, a reassuring look that, in retrospect, was the first twist of the knife. I walked into that ballroom feeling secure, even proud. The fourth quarter had been our best yet, mostly thanks to the expanded services I'd negotiated with the Sterling Group. I was wearing a new, deep emerald green dress I'd bought just for the occasion, a small, personal celebration of a year of crushing it. I remember feeling the smooth fabric, a tangible symbol of my success. Colleagues greeted me with big smiles. I was popular, respected. People came to me for advice, for help, for a sympathetic ear when Marcus was on a tear. I moved through the room, making small talk, my mind already half on next quarter strategy. I saw Marcus holding court by the bar, laughing a little too loudly. He was a master of the corporate stage, a showman who thrived on attention. He caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up, a gesture so fake it was almost funny. I found Sarah from the Sterling Group near the sad little dessert table. Her presence as our guest of honor was a testament to our strong partnership. "Amelia," she said, her smile genuine and warm. "I was hoping I'd find you. I wanted to thank you again for the incredible work on the logistics overhaul. You made my life so much easier." "We're a team," I said, the familiar, self-effacing words tasting like ash in my mouth before I even knew what was coming. "Don't be so modest," she shot back. "We both know you're the reason this partnership works. Marcus is lucky to have you." We chatted for a few more minutes about New Year plans. She mentioned a new, massive project on the horizon, a multi-million-dollar expansion that would dwarf our current contract. "It's still under wraps," she said, lowering her voice, "but I want you leading it. No one else understands our needs the way you do." This was it, the validation, the career-defining project that would finally put me on a level where Marcus couldn't ignore or erase me. A wave of pure joy washed over me, so strong it almost made me dizzy. This was the payoff for everything. My loyalty, my long hours, my quiet competence, it was all about to pay off big time. It was in that exact moment of supreme, unfiltered triumph that Marcus climbed onto the small stage. He picked up a microphone, his smug grin reflecting in the champagne flute he held up. "Friends, colleagues." His voice boomed through the speakers, hushing the room. I felt a surge of pride. He was about to announce the Q4 numbers to celebrate our success. Sarah gave my arm a congratulatory squeeze. "As we close out a banner year," Marcus began, "it's a time for reflection, a time to appreciate our successes and to make the hard decisions necessary for future growth." He paused for dramatic effect, letting his eyes sweep across the room. My smile was fixed, my back was straight. I was ready for my close-up. "Growth," he repeated, his eyes locking onto mine, "sometimes requires pruning. It means cutting away the branches that are no longer productive, to allow the stronger ones to flourish." My smile wavered. The air in my lungs felt sharp and cold. This wasn't the speech I was expecting. This was something else. Something dark and personal. "We talk a lot about teamwork," he said, his words dripping with condescension, But at the end of the day, this is a business of individual contributions. And we have to ask ourselves who is truly contributing. The publicness of it all, that was the point. This wasn't an HR meeting. This was a ritualistic shaming in front of the very peers and clients whose respect I had worked so hard to earn. He was exercising his power in the cruelest way possible. Then came the line that would be burned into my memory forever, and a special farewell to someone who won't be joining us in the new year. He held up the pink slip, not in an envelope, just a single folded sheet of paper, a prop for my public execution. My heart didn't just drop, it vaporized. The sounds of the room went fuzzy like I was underwater. The festive lights blurred into ugly streaks. I could feel every eye in the room on me, some full of pity, others with a kind of horrified curiosity. Most people just looked away, suddenly fascinated by their shoes. Their silence was a form of complicity, a collective turning of the back that left me utterly alone. Sometimes, he finished, his voice a smug, triumphant purr, we have to trim the fat to keep the body healthy. No hard feelings, Amelia. He said my name. He actually said it. Until that moment, a tiny, irrational part of me hoped this was just some bizarre, twisted metaphor. But with that one word, he made it real. I saw Sarah's face, a mask of pure shock. She started to take a step toward me, but one of Marcus's guys intercepted her. I stood frozen, the champagne flute still in my hand. It felt impossibly heavy. I remember the overwhelming urge to throw it at him, to see that smug smile shatter along with the glass. But I didn't. Some survival instinct took over. I carefully placed the flute on a passing waiter's tray. I turned without looking at anyone and started the long walk out of that ballroom. Every step felt like a lifetime. The sound of my own heels on the marble floor was the only sound I could hear, a funeral drumbeat marking the end of my career. Humiliation is a unique kind of pain, and in that moment I felt worthless. But as the heavy doors closed behind me, cutting off the party, a new feeling began to smolder under the shock and shame. It was a cold, quiet rage, the kind of rage that doesn't scream, the kind of rage that builds empires. The taxi ride home was a silent movie of city lights sliding past the window. I didn't cry. The shock was a physical thing, a thick blanket that numbed everything. I walked into my apartment, the green dress suddenly feeling like a clown costume. The pink slip was crumpled in my fist. I smoothed it out on my kitchen table. It was real. The humiliation wasn't just the firing, it was the spectacle. It was designed to shatter my professional identity, to make me feel so worthless I'd just crawl away and disappear. He didn't just want me gone. He wanted me broken. He wanted the sterling group for himself. And he figured by publicly disgracing me, he would sever any loyalty Sarah had to me. He assumed our connection was purely transactional, a company asset he could just reassign. He underestimated me. And more importantly, he underestimated the power of a real human connection. Sleep was a joke that night. My mind just kept replaying a highlight reel of my 5 years at Apex. The late nights, the missed birthdays, the blind loyalty. For what? To be thrown out like a broken piece of office furniture. First came the anger, hot and blinding. How dare he? Then came the fear. I was 33, my entire career built inside one company. My reputation was now tied to a humiliating public firing. The helplessness was suffocating. But sometime before dawn, as the first gray light started to peek through my window, something shifted. The waves of powerless rage started to pull back, and in their place a cold, diamond-hard clarity took over. He'd made a critical mistake. His ego had completely blinded him. I dug out my employment contract from a dusty file box. I read it cover to cover, my analyst brain finally kicking into gear. And there it was. Or rather, there it wasn't. In his rush to put me in my place, he had used a standard termination form. There was no non-compete clause. It was a stunning oversight, born of pure arrogance. He never imagined I'd have the guts to fight back. He saw me as a loyal workhorse, not a strategic threat. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a general who has just found a fatal flaw in the enemy's fortress. He thought he'd taken my queen, but he'd just left his king wide open. He wanted the Sterling Group? Fine. I would take it, but I wouldn't stop there. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to build something better, an empire founded on the very respect and integrity he had so grotesquely mocked. He handed me a pink slip to break me. Instead, he had handed me fuel. The humiliation wasn't the end of my story. It was the inciting incident. The battle was just beginning, and I was no longer playing defense. I was about to go on the attack, and I'd be playing chess while he was still setting up the checkers board. The next morning, I didn't sleep in. I didn't wallow. I woke up at 5 a.m., just like always. But instead of putting on a suit for Apex, I laced up my running shoes and pounded out my anger and grief on the cold, empty streets. With every stride, a plan began to take shape. This wasn't going to be some petty revenge plot. This was going to be a masterclass in corporate strategy. Real revenge isn't about destruction. It's about building something so successful your enemies become irrelevant footnotes in your own story. My secret weapon wasn't a legal loophole. It was something Marcus could never understand. Trust. Specifically, the trust one had built with Sarah at the Sterling Group. He saw her as an account number. I saw her as a brilliant professional trapped in her own bureaucratic maze, just like I had been. Our late-night calls weren't just about deadlines. They were about our shared frustration with incompetent bosses and toxic cultures. I knew her problems on a level Marcus couldn't even imagine. But I couldn't just call her and ask for the business. That would be messy and unprofessional. I had to play this smarter. First step, legitimize myself. That day, I drained a scary amount of my savings. I registered a business, Ameliavoss Consulting. I hired a freelance designer for a simple, elegant logo and a one-page website. I bought a domain name. I opened a business bank account. These small, boring tasks felt monumental. Each one was a brick in the foundation of my new empire. Next, I had to test the waters with my network. Reaching out after a public firing was terrifying. Would they see me as damaged goods? I drafted an email, not one begging for work, but a confident announcement. It briefly stated I'd left Apex to launch my own consulting firm, focusing on the efficiency solutions I was known for. I didn't mention the firing. I didn't air any dirty laundry. The message was all about confident, forward momentum. The first reply came from a former client I had helped 2 years prior. Amelia, great to hear from you. We were just talking about needing your help. Apex sent over some new guy and honestly, he just doesn't get it. Are you free to chat? That first call was nerve-wracking. But as I started talking, laying out a strategy, the old confidence came flooding back. They signed a 3-month contract by the end of the day. It wasn't huge, but it was proof. I had a business. I had a client. I was no longer Amelia, the fired employee. I was Ameliavoss, founder and CEO. Now, it was time for the Sterling Group. But I still didn't call Sarah. Instead, I sent her a simple, professional email from my new business address. It was short and to the point. I wished her well and included a link to my new website in my signature as a professional courtesy. No pitch, no plea, just a quiet statement of fact. I still exist. I'm still here. I let that breadcrumb sit for 2 days. The silence was deafening. I started to doubt everything. Had I misread our whole relationship? Was she just loyal to the Apex contract after all? Then, on the 3rd day, my phone rang. Her personal cell. Amelia, she said, her voice low and urgent. I got your email. We need to talk. Off the record. That phone call with Sarah changed everything. She was furious, not just at my firing, but at the sheer stupidity of it. He fired his best asset in the middle of our most critical partnership, Amelia. "What kind of an idiot does that?" she fumed. "The new guy he assigned this. Todd, he came in with some chest-thumping pitch about synergy. He couldn't answer a single one of my technical questions. He's a disaster." This was the opening I was waiting for, but I still played it cool. "I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah," I said, my voice calm. "Todd is new to the account." "He's incompetent," she shot back. "And now I'm in a bind." "That expansion project? It's been greenlit, and my CEO wants a proposal on his desk in 4 weeks. There's no way Apex under Todd can deliver. You have the institutional knowledge, not them." I let the silence hang in the air. This had to be her move. "So," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "hypothetically, what would it take for a new, agile consulting firm to put together a proposal for that expansion?" "Hypothetically," I replied, a real smile finally touching my lips. "That firm would be very interested, but it would have to be an open and fair bidding process, of course." "Of course," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "Let me see what I can do." The next 4 weeks were a blur of pure, exhilarating work. While Apex was fumbling around, trying to get Todd up to speed, I was a one-woman army. I used the money from my first contract to hire a couple of freelance data analysts I trusted. We worked out of my apartment, the walls covered in white boards, the floor littered with coffee cups. We weren't just building a proposal. We were designing the future of the Sterling Group's entire logistics network. I poured every ounce of my knowledge, every late-night insight, and every frustration I ever had with Apex's bloated methods into that document. I designed a system that was leaner, faster, and smarter than anything Apex could dream of. I even built a custom dashboard prototype over a weekend, something I'd pitched to Marcus months ago and been told was not a budget priority. Meanwhile, I was getting intel from the inside. Sarah was, in her words, giving Apex enough rope to hang themselves. She'd ask Todd for data points she knew he couldn't find. She'd invite him to technical meetings where he was hopelessly lost. He got more and more frustrated, blaming the client for being difficult, a complaint that got back to Marcus, who, in his arrogance, actually believed him. Marcus was so focused on the existing contract, he had no idea a much bigger prize was even on the table. The day came to submit the proposal. I didn't just email a PDF. I had it professionally bound and messengered to the Sterling Group's headquarters, addressed directly to Sarah and the CEO. It was a statement. It screamed competence. A week later, Sarah called. "The board was blown away," she said simply. "They've never seen a proposal this detailed. Apex's submission was a joke, a cut-and-paste job from their old marketing fluff." "So what happens now?" I asked, my heart hammering. "Now," she said, "we invite both parties in for a final presentation. It's a formality, really, but the board wants to see you in action. And I think they want to see the look on Marcus's face. All right, before we get to the moment you've all been waiting for, let me ask you something. Have you ever been so underestimated that it just lit a fire under you to prove everyone wrong? If you have, or if you just believe that talent and integrity should win in the end, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps tell the algorithm that stories about justice and karma are worth sharing. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe. Now, let's get back to that boardroom. The day of the presentation, I felt strangely calm. The fear was gone, replaced by an ice-cold certainty. I chose my outfit like a warrior choosing armor. A sharp navy blue power suit, heels that clicked with authority, and the same emerald green blouse I had worn to the holiday party. A private nod to the woman I was then, and a symbol of the power I now held. I walked into the Sterling Group's gorgeous boardroom alone. The long, polished table reflected the city skyline. Sarah was there, with the CEO and the rest of the board. They greeted me warmly, professionally. You could feel the anticipation in the room. As I was setting up, the boardroom doors swung open. In walked Marcus and Todd. Marcus was practically glowing with smug confidence. He clearly thought this was just a formality to renew his contract. He saw me standing at the head of the table, and his face broke into a condescending smirk. "Amelia," he said, his voice dripping with false surprise. "Trying to get back in the game, are we? I admire the hustle, but this is the big leagues." I didn't say a word. I just gave him a small, tight smile and turned my attention to the CEO. "If you're ready, sir." The CEO nodded. "Please proceed, Ms. Voss." For the next 30 minutes, I owned that room. I didn't just present a plan. I demonstrated total mastery of their business. I walked them through my custom dashboard, showing them real-time efficiency projections. I answered their most technical questions before they were even fully asked. I spoke not as a vendor, but as a partner. All the while, I could feel Marcus's demeanor shifting. The smugness slowly curdled into confusion, then dawning horror as he realized the true scale of the project being discussed. He was seeing, for the first time, the prize he never even knew existed. He kept looking from my presentation to his own flimsy folder, the color draining from his face. The man had shown up to a gunfight with a strongly worded letter. When I finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. The CEO broke it. "Thank you, Ms. Voss. That was impressive." He then turned his cool gaze to Marcus. "Marcus, we received your proposal, of course. But I have to be honest, it seems we're not quite aligned on the future of this partnership." Marcus sputtered. "Well, we believe our track record speaks for itself. We value the Sterling Group." The CEO held up a hand, cutting him off. "Your track record, as of late, has been less than stellar, and your proposal for this new initiative was, frankly, insulting. It showed a complete lack of understanding of our goals." He then turned back to me. "Ms. Voss, the board is in unanimous agreement. We would like to move forward with Voss Consulting, effective immediately. We will be terminating our contract with Apex Innovations." Checkmate. I didn't look at Marcus. I didn't need to. His utter, soul-crushing humiliation as he realized he'd been completely outmaneuvered was more satisfying than any shouting match could ever be. He walked in expecting a victory lap and instead found a brick wall, built by the very person he had thrown out into the cold. He had tried to publicly humiliate me, and he had succeeded. Now, in the quiet, sterile environment of a corporate boardroom, I had returned the favor tenfold, not by being cruel, but simply by being better. A year can change everything. My apartment is no longer my office. Voss Consulting now occupies the entire 30th floor of a downtown skyscraper, ironically with a much better view than my old office at Apex. My one-woman army has grown into a team of 20 brilliant, passionate people. Our culture is built on everything Apex was not: transparency, respect, and the belief that good ideas can come from anyone. We don't have fat to trim, we have a team to nurture. The Sterling Group contract was the first domino. After we flawlessly executed the first phase of their expansion, word got out. My reputation, once tarnished by a public firing, was now my greatest asset. Clients didn't just want my services. They wanted to be a part of the comeback story. We grew faster than I ever could have imagined, landing 2 more Fortune 500 companies within 6 months. I didn't hear much about Marcus, just whispers. Apex was bleeding clients. Losing Sterling wasn't just a financial hit. It was a fatal blow to their reputation. The story of the Boardroom showdown became a quiet legend in our industry. No one wanted to work with a firm that fired its golden goose. About 6 months ago, I got a call from a private equity firm. They were looking at acquiring the assets of Apex Innovations, which were now mostly just debt and a decaying client list. They wanted to hire me as a consultant to evaluate the business. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I took the meeting. The lead partner laid out the financials. The company was on the verge of collapse. "Frankly," he said, "we're not sure there's anything here worth salvaging." He pushed a sheet of paper across the table. It was a list of Apex's largest debts. And that's when I saw it. The bank that held most of their debt was a bank I had just formed a strategic partnership with for another client. I made a few calls. I leveraged my new relationships, my new power. 2 weeks later, my company didn't just evaluate Apex's debt. We acquired it for pennies on the dollar. I now owned the leash of the man who had tried to destroy me. I never called him. I never sent a gloating email. I just let the business mechanics do their work. The new ownership forced a complete restructuring. Marcus was the first to go, not in a public spectacle, but with a quiet, unceremonious email from an HR department that no longer answered to him. His kingdom, built on stolen credit and quiet betrayals, had crumbled to dust. The other night, my team and I were celebrating our 1-year anniversary. We were at a rooftop bar overlooking the city lights. My COO raised her glass for a toast. To Amelia, she said, for building a company where we all feel valued. As our glasses clinked, my mind flashed back to that other party, that other toast. He handed me a pink slip during a holiday toast, thinking it was the end. A year later, I was toasting a $10 million valuation, surrounded by people who had my back. He thought he was giving me a punishment. In reality, he gave me the greatest gift an enemy could ever offer, a reason to build my own throne. So, let me ask you, what would you have done? Let me know your own stories of workplace justice in the comments below. Your story might just be the inspiration someone else needs to start building their own empire. Thanks for watching.